Welcome to the Rock's Backpages podcast. My name is Barney Hoskins. I'm sat here, as usual, with Mr. Marc Pringle.
Hi, Barney.
And we're both sat here with our very special guest, Neil Tennant. Welcome.
Hello, nice to be here.
We're very honoured.
In your cupboard. Actually, in the archive.
In the archive.
Well, we're very honoured to have you here, especially since you must be very busy with the new Pet Shop Boys album.
Actually, we've sort of done the promo now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're just getting ready we're going on tour.
Yeah.
And so we're just starting to work on that now.
Well, thank you for coming in on a very drizzly Thursday.
Yes.
To talk to us. In this episode, we'll be discussing everything that's new on Rock's Backpages and paying tribute to the great Andrew Weatherall, who died earlier this week. But let's start with Smash Hits, the fabulous pop magazine that you wrote for Neil in the early 80s.
That's 82 to 85, yeah.
82 to 85. Tell us how Smash Hits shaped your sensibility, and the flip side of that, how you helped to shape Smash Hits, because you were, for a period, you were assistant editor, were you not?
I was, yeah. Well, I was always interested in pop music and also in songwriting. You know, as a child, I got a guitar and I taught myself to play the guitar. I taught myself to play the piano. And we used to have sheet music at home and stuff like that. And I wanted to be a songwriter, really.
From what age?
Oh, from about the age of 12, really.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to do. And I wrote songs consistently by myself from the age of 12 till I met Chris Lowe in 1981.
Yeah.
But then I did a degree in history, and then I worked for Marvel Comics as my first job.
That's
the UK
right.
Marvel Comics, where we had 7 comics a week. They used to make the colour American monthly comics into weekly black and white comics, and I had to put them together and put the editorial pages in. And that was the first time I wrote anything, actually. I decided that as various pop stars were Marvel Comics fans, I would interview them. And so I interviewed Marc Bolan, which is the first interview I ever did.
Wow. Marc Bolan was the first interview.
Yeah, in the autumn of 1975, I went to Keith Oltham's office not far from here, actually.
Yeah.
It was raining as well. And I had this ancient tape recorder that one of the graphic designers at Marvel Comics had lent me. I never used one before. And so Mark comes in, he was in a slightly heavy phase, had enormous fingers like sausages, and he had the Marc Bolan voice, like, yeah, the cat's great, And I put the tape recorder down on the table, and then we went and sat on the sofa across the room. For some reason, I was too cool to take. I thought it was too committed to take the tape recorder with me. So we sat down, and Marc Bolan looked, and just without stopping talking, walked across the room, got the cassette player, and put it between us.
Oh, how sweet.
It was really sweet of them. As it happened, the cassette recorder didn't really work very well. But anyway, and then I interviewed the sensational Alex Harvey band. And I got the full PR thing. We were driven me and a friend were driven a chauffeur-driven Jag to Coventry to see them. That was my second interview. And then my third interview was going to be Paul McCartney, but they weren't having it.
Okay.
And the Bay City Rollers weren't having it. So my series came to an end. Anyway, and then I worked in book publishing, and then I worked in book publishing involved with TV tie-ins, which was ITV Books. And while I was there, we did a book which I thought of with Madness, a sort of pamphlet, really, a magazine. Do you remember their film Take It or Leave It?
Yes.
And we did Take It or Leave It, the official film tie-in. And I got Steve Bush to design it, who started designing the face.
Right.
I didn't actually know Smash Hits, by the way, because I was a sort of NME reader.
Yeah.
And then I used to go meet Steve Bush to get the layouts. And my friend from Newcastle, Eric Watson, did the pictures for that. And then suddenly I went to the Smash Hits office and I met Dave Hepworth, and they loved these pictures Eric Watson had taken of Madness, which actually were very, very good. And then suddenly out of the blue, Dave Hepworth called me up and said they wanted to do a Smash Hits yearbook. And Steve Bush and I had just done the Tiswas yearbook. And so I got this job to edit the Smash Hits yearbook. Dave didn't mention to me that I was also to be news editor of Smash Hits. But I discovered that on the first day.
Did you?
Yes.
That's amazing.
And I always remember going in for this interview. I met Mark Ellen for the first time, and I was carrying a jiffy bag. And Mark said, the difference between book publishing and music journalism is Book publishing people always carry jiffy bags. Music journalists always carry 12-inch cardboard envelopes. Totally right. And I remember him saying to me, "Welcome to the world of free records." And this was such a great thing, the free records.
Yeah.
You know, suddenly, my tiny little studio flat in Chelsea was just you couldn't move for records.
Fantastic.
That was very exciting.
I mean, you said that you were an NME reader. I mean, I'm very similar. I wasn't a Smash Hits reader at the time, and it's actually doing my job here.
He is now.
Has introduced me to the delights of Smash Hits. And you say in the interview that we're going to be playing some clips of, you say that actually it was quite a sophisticated mag. I mean, it wrote about all kinds of strands of music, and whilst it had a very kind of jokey tone, it loved the stuff, and that sort of it transmitted across it. I mean, I wish I'd read it at the time.
Yeah, no, it was the NME was always, you know, when I became a musician or whatever, it was always I would stab you in the back. And you went, the whole music press, in fact. But not Smash Hits. But Smash Hits, we always went with enthusiasms. So people would write about their personal enthusiasms in pop music.
Sure.
And people they knew were a great story. Mm-hmm. And also the sense of humour. I think when I was there in 1985, that started to take over. Tom Hibbert joined.
Yes, of
course. Who was an amazing sort of Baroque writer. And Mark, you know, is a very funny writer, and Dave, you know, they're all funny writers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was a really, really important thing, and really turning pop stars into characters.
Yeah.
And all the nicknames. I mean, it was me that knighted Sir William Idle, our greatest living Englishman. That was taken because I don't remember Oberon Waugh used to write a diary in Private Eye.
Yes.
And he used to have a thing saying, "Why has Peregrine Worththorne never been knighted?" You'd call him Sir Peregrine Worththorne, our greatest living Englishman. And so I just took that and gave it to Billy Idol.
That's fantastic. I mean, again, in the interview you say that, sadly in a way, that aesthetic went over to Q, but it's kind of curdled in the process in some sort of way.
I don't remember this specific interview, of course, but it did go to Q. But I think you see it now I think its influence in music journalism is much stronger than, for instance, you might have assumed all music journalism would be influenced by Paul Morley or Ian Penman, if you looked at them from an early 80s perspective.
Sure.
But if you look at G2...
Yeah.
G2 in The Guardian is practically the Smash Hits of our time.
Yeah, and of course the whole pop bitch aesthetic.
And the pop bitch. Although the pop bitch aesthetic is different because it's too bitchy.
Okay, too bitchy.
I mean,
and you wouldn't have printed stories about people's sexual or drug habits or whatever.
Curiously, NME, I think, was influenced by Smash Hits kind of in reverse. I mean, when people think of later writers at the end of the 80s, early 90s, like Barbara Ellen and all that,
they were more,
much closer to Smash Hits than Paul Morley. That's for sure.
And also The Face. Yeah. The Face was started by Nick Logan.
Yeah, of course.
And you had people like Leslie White. We tried to employ Leslie White Smash Hits, but she went on and did journalism, Sunday Times and things. You know, Smash Hits was over the road from the NME.
That's right.
I was just about to say, because when you were reminiscing about The Office, and it just brought back these memories of working just across Carnaby Street from you guys. I mean, we must have walked past each other.
No, you could literally see into the NME's office.
Yes, and I have to say, I certainly began to feel quite threatened by Smash Hits. I mean, I knew in some way that things were changing. There was a sort of seismic shift going on.
Well, we knew that because we saw our circulation figures. We saw I remember us once holding up our circulation figures at our window, and you were, of course, not you personally, NME was across the road, and Smash Hits a circulation figure. There's various photographs you can find of us drinking, with a Mark with a bottle of champagne, because our circulation has gone up to 400,000. And by the time Chris and I are on we were reputedly on the best-selling issue of Smash Hits ever on the cover when it was selling 750,000 in about 19...
What issue was that?
I think that's in 1987, 1988.
Yeah.
So, of course, great to be part of something that's happening.
Yeah.
Really. And that period of pop music, 82 to 85... I mean, if you go a little bit earlier, maybe 81 to 85, is an incredible era of pop music, with probably kicked off by Dare by the Human League. Soft Cell. Culture Club, incredibly underrated, I think, as songwriters, because the pop thing is so, the visuals are so strong. That second album, Culture Club, made, I remember Ronnie Gurr, Virgin, phoning me up and saying, "This is their rumours."
Oh, that's brilliant.
Needless to say, I'd never listened to Rumours. I knew what he meant by Fleetwood Mac. I knew it was a huge album. And actually, if you listen to it, it is their rumours. Every song is fantastic.
Was that Waking Up with the House on Fire? Or was that, I forget.
No, that's the third. That's the problematical third album.
First one was
Kissing to Be Clever.
Second one was
eulogising about this album, and I can't remember what it's called.
Because they were essentially album artists.
I can't. But anyway, the second album is the one.
Right.
Anyway, I think this and it's a great, and it was a great time to be there.
This is a good moment. First of all, we should play the Smash Hits clip.
Yeah.
And then after that, the Ideology clip, because you talk about Culture Club very specifically in that.
Smash Hits was always, when I was there, a sincere magazine with a deep commitment to music. And also, Smash Hits was a post-punk magazine. It was a magazine with an ideology. It was a magazine that believed in good pop music can be really good and really popular. When it's both of those things, it's fucking great.
Right.
And there was a bit of, because I was one of the starters of the inverted company story there. And there was a bit of that going on, but it was also, if you read it now, it reads painfully sincerely, let me tell you. But that was then imitated by successive generations of people.
Right.
In fact, Q now is a really bizarre, ossified, it has an ossified style based on Mark Ellen and Steve Bush and Neil Tennant and Dave Hepburn. And everything's inverted commas. It's really, really horribly done because they haven't advanced it. It's Smash Hits we used to call it. We would only use jokes at a amount of time. We'd say, right, that's old bollocks. We've got to have new bollocks now.
Yes, we did used to say that. Yeah. I think that's to be fair to Q. I think when was that interview?
96.
Yeah, there was a period where Q became sort of unbelievably ironic, and it didn't really work.
I mean, the only bit that worked actually was Tom Hibbert's "Who the Hell Do You Think You Are" sort of column.
That was genius,
which was absolutely fabulous.
Genius, yeah.
But when it was applied to the writing about music, it sort of
wasn't their function.
Yeah.
Smash Hits. So I mentioned the pieces of yours. So you mentioned Soft Cell earlier. The first piece from July '82, which is an interview with Mark Armand, and it's actually really. It's very sweet. It kind of gets to the sort of vulnerability of Mark at that point. He talks about panic attacks and things you hear so much about today, but I get big bouts of nerves and occasional bouts of depression. Reading this made me wonder whether Soft Cell were an influence on the Pet Shop Boys. You talk about the impassive David Ball. And
he went to the same school as Chris Lowe.
Did he? Okay, so I mean, there's obvious parallels there, but as an electronic duo, and probably the first electronic pop duo to have a huge hit as they did that factor into your design of?
It did in one way. When I first met Chris and we started talking about music, we both liked the single. I think their finest moment, in fact, Soft Cell had out, Bedsitter.
Yeah, I love
which is an amazing piece of social realism, actually.
So dark.
But also it's about what we did, wandering around Soho, going to clubs and stuff, going to heaven or something. And that thing of the sort of imagined glamour of where you're going to, and then you go back to your little little studio flat on the King's Road. And although I've never really done social realism, that song was a sort of influence.
Right.
And I've often said that Chris said to me, can't you make your lyrics more sexy? Because my lyrics were very singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
Poetical.
Yeah.
They still are, really, in a way. But he was right. And West End Girls is a result of that. So I don't think West End Girls isn't indebted to Soft Cell, because it's really indebted to Grandmaster Flash. But there was a sort of an aesthetic there that we sympathised with.
We could play it now, because I think this fits, is that you talk about how, in the interview, about how the 90s were actually what everyone claims the 80s were, where the 90s was about greed and making money, and the 80s had a strong ideological element, even in the most frothy pop.
To this day, completely underrated. I mean, I'm glad I said that, because I still think that. If you were to go back in a time machine to 1982, you'd be surprised at how ragged the whole thing is. Boy George's clothes are made by someone on a sewing machine in the East End or something. And it's all quite homemade and a bit naive. People are reading books and getting a few ideas. Steve Strange is watching Visconti films.
Absolutely.
And everyone, apart from Gary Newman, is left-wing. I mean, there's the embarrassing thing. Paul Weller has to go on the Red Wedge tour and discover, to his horror, Gary Kemper's Spandau Ballet's on that night. They're meant to be Tory scum, but they're not. They're left-wing too.
No, it's absolutely...
And it's a very different time. Whereas by the 90s, everyone knows how the system works. Because the 90s is the heyday of the whole CD thing. Everyone knows how it works. You do Top of the Pops. You're on CD UK and that program plays videos on Saturday mornings, and everyone knows how it all works. And it's become much more about money.
Come a chameleon. You come and go. You come and go.
And also, all of those groups that were around then, funnily enough, were influenced by punk. You know, if you take Culture Club was an idealistic idea. You know, you had the drag queen, a Jewish guy, a black guy, and a white middle-class suburban boy. And that's why they called it Culture Club. It had an ideology. Music tended to have an ideology in the 1980s. When Chris and I first started, you know, we were number one West End girls. Chris' famous remarks were on Top of the Pops, and the camera panned towards us. Chris hissed at me, "Don't look triumphant." Well, of course, nowadays you would routinely be triumphant. You know, because you felt that you had some kind of integrity and that success wasn't the issue. Great to have success, but success wasn't the issue. The issue wasn't it great to do something great in a mass market and change things?
In a western town, a dead-end world, the East End boys and West End girls. West End girls.
Well, I think that's spot on then, spot on now. I mean, certainly the first half of the 80s felt fantastically exciting in a way. For me, I think things petered out a bit when indie became turned into a genre of music rather than the idea of independence.
See, indie for us may as well not have existed. It wasn't an issue. For me, the story is the 80s, because we're the second half of the 80s. The first half is gorgeous pop music that conquers the world. The famous photograph of Boy George and Annie Lennox taken for smash hits that becomes the cover of Newsweek in America.
Amazing.
An amazing moment. And the second half of the 80s is when dance music comes in. Suddenly, on Top of the Pops, there are people with turntables. Our future manager, Dave Durrell, and with Mars, pump up the volume. And we're part of that. We're all remixes by Shep Pettibone and Frankie Knuckles and what have you. House music's come in, changed everything completely. And in fact, by the end of the 80s, house music is the sound of pop. It's actually Stock Aitken and Waterman are making a house-derived kind of pop music. And that changes everything.
Stock Aitken and Waterman also, to some degree, like yourselves, drew stuff from high NRG.
High energy, which of course comes from disco. That was the the late 70s, as well as being punk, is also the great era of disco pop songs, which is a fantastic era of songwriting. To this day, I think, underrated.
I love the fact that you were sent to interview the police, and it was through that trip, the police whom you were aboard.
I didn't know.
But through that, you got to meet Bobby O. You went and
I remember Mark. I was doing the Smash Hits yearbook, 1984 in 1983, and the police were the hugest thing in the world. And also, it's a brilliant song, Every Breath You Take, an incredibly good record. And anyway, you had to go for one night to New York, and we were obviously getting blasé at Smash Hits because no one would go. and I thought, well, I'm not going to go. I'm not a rock fan. I never really listened to them. And anyway, my arm was twisted, and I go, and then I said to Chris, I could meet Bobby O. Now, the Bobby O thing comes partly out of Smash Hits. Chris hears. To this day, Chris would do this. Chris is the kind of person that asks the DJ what the record is. He hears this record. He asks the DJ, is Passion by the Flirts. He buys it on import, costs £5. And he says, this is it. And so this record becomes our musical template. Anyway, Right by my desk at Smash Hits is the dumper box, where all this tsunami of records comes in every day. Most of them just go in the dumper box. After work, I'm such a mute pop fan, I will stay and go through the dumper box. In case there's anything good.
Yeah. Fantastic.
I discover a record by Phyllis Nelson. I phone up the PR and say, this record's amazing. It becomes number one.
Move closer. Yeah.
Move closer. What a beautiful record. It's in the dumper box. Anyway, I then discover, to my astonishment, all these records, and they're all produced by Bobby Orlando. And so I started taking them home and say, look, there's another Bobby O record. And then you may recall, over the road from Smash Hits, on the same side as the NME, there's a weird place which has got sort of plastic showgirls' legs going up and down, and they sell tourist crap.
It's all coming back.
Do you remember it? But they've got a DJ.
Right.
The DJ plays Bobby O.
Right.
He keeps playing I'm So Hot For You, which, in an amazing moment, Dave Hepworth makes Single of the Week in Smash Hits, because he likes it as well. And he compares him to Bruce Springsteen. And so all these things come together. So I go to New York, do the police thing. Actually, it's quite amazing. They play Shea Stadium. And then they're number one in America. The entire American rock journalist corps is sitting around, and the only person Sting talks to is me. And I said to him, I went to the same school as you. So we talk about we did go to the same school in Newcastle, so we talk about that. And then the next morning, I go and see Bobby O. I've phoned him up, and he said, hey, come round. And I go in there, he says, let's make a record.
Yeah.
And a month later, we're in the studio in New York making the original West End Girls.
That's fantastic.
And
what a story.
when I came back to Smash Hits, I told everyone I was going to meet Bobby. All the Smash Hits people knew about Bobby O. If you ask Ian Birch or Mark Campbell, David Remmer, they'd all know this. And there was a sort of celebration in the office that I'd met Bobby O. We're now going to make a record.
That's fantastic.
And I won't let anyone mention this in Smash Hits. The Pet Shop Boys, I went and mentioned, when the name arrives, I went and mention it. It's only ever mentioned when I go on holiday. Someone puts a joking reference to it in the bit section. And then a month later we come back, we record. And I'm too embarrassed to play it on West End Girls because I'm speaking on it. So I played them the 3 other tracks. And then Scoffer, David Bostock, one of the designers, I think now publishing director of EMAP, makes copies of the tape for me, and he says, hey, there's a great song where you sort of rap. And I said, oh, God, you haven't heard that one. And he said, no, it's great. And that's sort of the beginning of that.
That's fantastic.
That is incredible.
That's really great.
I mean, we have to talk about this. I mean, it's happened to some other writers who have, as it were, their poachers-turned-gamekeepers.
Or the other way around.
I mean, it must have been extraordinary for you to be interviewing these seminal pop figures in between 82 and 85, and then, lo and behold, you're one of them.
I think it was weirder for them. From my perspective, I've been writing songs since about 1967, actually, is the reality. So I'm quite an experienced songwriter.
This is what you're always aiming
by
for.
1982.
Yeah, exactly.
Chris and I have met and started writing songs before I'm at Smash Hits, actually.
Right.
So I have 2 careers. I have my publishing / journalism career, which people say, what would you have done if Smash Hits hadn't happened? I said, well, I'd probably work for Q. And because when I left, they wanted me to be editor of Smash Hits, actually. And it was quite a big thing to be offered that and to turn it down at the age of 31 to become a pop star. But anyway, obviously it worked out. But I know after that you'd be at the San Remo Song Festival. And Duran are there, and Spandau, the Smiths. And Paul Weller. I always remember saying to me, because West End Girls had been number 1 in America by this point, he said, sort of amazed by that, because they always tell me I sound too British. And I said, that's what they like about it. Yeah. It sounds British.
Did your experience as a writer help you when it came to dealing with interviews in the media later on?
That is the thing, because people always think, they used, in the NME in the 80s, there's always a thing about perfect pop. And there's a certain amount of bullshit in that, I think, really. And people think, you worked out how to write a perfect pop song. Well, I mean, anyone could do that if they had the nous, or assuming there is such a thing as a perfect pop song. You don't have to be a journalist. The one thing I took away from it, which I still have to this day, is you can sort of see how the interview's going. Yeah. Because you've done it yourself. Yeah. And so it would make me sometimes a bit tetchy, particularly in the 80s. Because we had a certain amount of hostility because I'd been a journalist. So people thought it wasn't authentic, this thing. These are 2 clever guys who are sort of playing downplaying the industry a bit or something like that.
Yeah.
And of course, So wasn't like that.
No, of course.
So isn't like, I mean, we're both in some ways quite naive, really, I think. And I think that's why we're still here. But so I would say, okay, that's the end of the interview, turn the cassette recorder off, throw it across the room at him. And because and then the PR would say, oh, you know, he's your biggest fan in Belgium. And I just brought the interview to a halt after 10 minutes. And because I used to get paranoid about it.
But didn't you also realise, because I've read a lot of interviews with you in my job here, and you give good quotes consistently. And you must have known the value of giving good quote, because I know that some journalists really I hear the taped interviews where the journalist is asking a question and they get kind of monosyllabic answers, and you knew how to kind of give them a lot of meat to put on.
Yeah, but that's your perspective of looking at it.
Okay.
My perspective is I quite like talking about music.
Yeah. Yes,
and
fair
let's
enough.
face it, I know a lot about the Pet Shop Boys. And also, Chris Lowe gives amazing quotes.
Yes.
We did an interview for The Guardian recently, which they took.
It was so funny.
Well, and actually,
I was laughing out
the funny
loud.
quotes of him. Chris gives this incredible quote, because this is when I turned back into a journalist, which I was writing the piece. When he says, although Neil was an altar boy, he has no relationship with gospel music. It's such a ridiculous thing to say.
I was roaring with laughter at that.
And the brilliant quote that finishes the piece, this was at Alexis, wasn't it? Alexis Petrilli. And you say something like, are we going to run out of ideas? That's when you call Brian Eno.
That's what Chris says again. I always think Chris gives the really good quotes.
They're so dry, aren't they?
I tend to, the way it works in interviews with us is I give the party line and the info,
right,
and Chris just sits there and then puts gags in.
But it's a great double act.
No, it is. Yeah, it is.
It's amazing. How long? It's how many years have Pet Shop Boys been?
35 years or something.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But it's not contrived, though.
No.
It is. It's just the way it is.
And it's pleasure. You still get enormous pleasure from doing it.
Well, after interviews, I was making the records, yes, and writing songs.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a lot of fun. You know, we have a studio in Berlin now. I say studio, I said earlier, it's just a little room bit like this.
I'm sure it's not like this.
And we sit there, and it's, you know, it's fun.
Again,
sometimes nothing happens. We go out for dinner or lunch or something.
But you have, in this interview that we're running, the audio interview, you talk about having fun in the studio. Then 1996, you have fun in the studio, and the process of making records is an inherently enjoyable process.
Well, you know, on the way here, because we used to work in not far Nottingham Gate, in Farm West, and throughout the late 80s and all the 90s, we worked consistently in Farm West. And I was just thinking, because it's now being developed into flats.
That's right.
And it was before that, you probably know it was Island Studios.
Basin Street,
and they had a flat upstairs that both Jimi Hendrix and Bob Marley had lived in. And it was sort of Trevor Horn's little place.
Yes.
That was a great... I always like being involved in an organisation. I always miss, in a way, having a proper job. I used to love going to smash hits. And it was such fun. And the conversation was good, and we had music playing and stuff. And likewise, going into Psalm West, you'd know the personal reception. There was a woman who ran Trevor's business called Lola, we used to know. And downstairs, there was Marco, the Italian chef, who became Madonna's chef. And then at 10:30, they'd serve Jamaican food, where amazingly it was served by Lucky Gordon.
Really?
No.
Lucky Gordon. Yeah, so when we were making Nothing Has Been Proved for the film Scandal, I said to Lucky, there's a line that goes, "It's a scandal. Can you come in and say that?" But he wanted, I can't remember, he wanted 50 grand or something. It was 50. And I said, we can't pay that. And I was watching the TV series recently. I thought it was cheeky of me to have asked him that, really. Because when you see what you went through, it's not just a bit of fun, really.
That's fair enough.
And actually, it was sort of, it suddenly occurred to me, it didn't occur to me before, that it was a bit cheeky of me to have asked him that. And we had the Jamaican food, and then George Michael would be always in the studio, and his dog Hippie wandering around, and other artists, Paul Morley might suddenly appear, and it was a really fantastic time.
Fantastic.